The salvage yard of New Alexandria didn't sleep so much as it exhaled a slow, metallic breath under twin amber suns. Between spires of scrapped dreadnought ribs and the husks of cargo skiffs, Terran Shivers studied a quantum stabilizer, the size of a bread box, and exactly as temperamental as a god. If he got the polarity wrong, the whole row of lot stacks could vaporize and take his reputation along with it. He tilted the device, listening for the telltale grit of cracked lattice. 50-50. He murmured his favorite odds. You really shouldn't be here after hours, sang a voice that was half melody, half warning. He turned. Already wearing the grin he used like armor, then it snagged in place. The woman hovering at eye level in a sleek chair had skinned the soft green of sea glass and hair like a spill of violet satin. The chair's Mark 7 compensator whispered a strained, hot pitch only a tinkerer would hear. I could say the same, he countered. But I suspect neither of us believes in should. N'ira la vari, she said, sliding closer with casual command. Eyes bright. Amused. Inventory specialist. And you're the human submitting scandalously low bids on our most dangerous salvage. Innovative procurement specialist. Terran corrected. Rolls off the tongue. Like a legal violation. Her lips quirked. But the chair shuddered again, too warm. Whatever the Galactic Health Authority had issued her was straining. You're running hot, he said, circling with hands up. Permission to not let you fry. By all means. Add unauthorized maintenance to your rap sheet. The words were dry. The flash in her eyes said she'd risk the help. He dropped to a knee, thumbed open the service seam, and found the Mark 7's coils misaligned by a degree that would doom a shuttle. Standards, he muttered, and set his multi-tool singing. A minute later, the whine softened to a feline purr. The heat bled away. N'ira eased the chair sideways and blinked. Lighter, she breathed. And draws down. 30%. 28. If your battery's sulky, Taran said, unable not to preen. You're either brilliant or reckless. Why not both? He straightened, and, before sanity could interrupt, added, speaking of reckless, I've been prototyping something. Not approved. Not polite. Possibly life-altering. Mr. Innovative Procurement Specialist, she said, amused, wary. Are you proposing something inappropriate? Always. He deadpanned. But I meant legs robotic. Salvage-born and fully neural. Better than what the authority passes off as generous. The smile left her face like a door closing. Not funny. Not a joke. He jerked his head toward the back edge of the yard where a converted cargo container glowed iceberg blue. Come see. She hesitated. Somewhere past the stacked mass drivers. The guild's night office clicked lights one by one, making the yard look like a city of sleeping titans. A pair of yard kids chased a rolling bearings ring, shrieking with laughter. An old fabrication droid, Turan's one-eyed mud of a machine, trundled after them and obeyed no one but him. N'ira watched the kids with a softness that had nothing to do with him. Then, cut the hover chair to follow. Inside his container workshop, hollows bloomed clean planes of cobalt light suspended over workbenches and sorted bins. The air smelled of rosin and ozone. And the wall held neat rows of prosthetic joints next to engine gimbals, because, in Terran's mind, both were ways to give a thing back its motion. This is organized, N'ira admitted, running a finger along a rack of labeled microlattices. I expected grease. I keep the grease on the droid, he said. This is for surgery. Holoschematics blossomed at his gesture, a pair of chromed legs, sleek, modular, with ligatured actuators and quantum processors, tucked like knuckles. The interface diagram was the heart, a halo of adaptive nodes designed to sing in harmony with a foreign nervous system. The mechanical problem is trivial, he said, because he was brave enough to be glib. The neural handshake is where everyone fails. The authority said Lavari synapses are too complex for human-built maps. Naira murmured, eyes hunting the code. Our signal branching is chaotic, beautiful, adaptive. He flashed a single palm-warm processor in a padded tray. The casing scored by a crash and luck. These are Arwen research grade. They don't force a map. They learn one. Her gaze flicked to the processor. Then to him, and you found it. I'm very good at finding what corporations drop and governments forget. He dimmed the holo. It'll go faster if I understand the accident. The hoverchair's ambient lights cooled. Naira's fingers traced the armrest. Then flattened. Steady. Terraforming plant, she said quietly. Atmospheric processors with insufficient shielding. When they failed, the gravitational backlash did what it does. There were 4 of us near the core. I was the only one who lived. The company called it an unforeseeable anomaly. The settlement covered my chair and 6 months of therapy. The rest was legal theater. Bastards, Daran said, not bothering with polish. Welcome to the galaxy, she said with a small, messed-up smile. I made peace with it. Peace and I are cordial acquaintances. Peace is overrated, he said, then lifted a shoulder. I did compliance for a megacorp, once wore the badge. Kissed the ring. Found patterns in unforeseeable anomalies that were anything but. Filed reports. Got iced out. So, I switched strategies. He tapped the bench. The bins. The legs. If they throw people away, I collect what's thrown and fix it. You're not what you look like, she said softly. Neither are you. He stepped close enough to catch the faint floral note under the metallic workshop air. Most people break angry or small. You're here counting volts and power draw. That's because I work inventory, she said. Deadpan. But her voice was rough around the edges. And because it's easier than counting years. 11, she added, as if daring him to flinch. 3 months. 17 days. He didn't flinch. Tomorrow, he said. I'll run your measurements. Build a neural baseline. And we'll start the handshake. It will be slow. It might be dangerous. And the Salvage Guild will be furious. I'm poaching a talent after curfew. Guild rules are suggestions for people who think the guild won't sell them out to the court, Naira said, and instantly looked like she regretted it. Outside, a train of loaders clanked past, and someone shouted about lot manifests. The world pressed close again. You didn't hear that. From me, never. Taran said. He'd heard rumors contracts awarded for reasons that smelled of velvet and knives. A minister's cousin who oversaw safety audits with a fountain pen. I don't mind annoying them. You don't mind annoying anyone, she said. Accurate, he said, and reached without thinking. Just a brush of his fingers to hers. A human contact scan for permission. She didn't pull away. He felt the smallest tremor of current up his wrist. Like her nervous system humming, hello. Both their breaths hitched. The room took a slow step back. I should go, she said at last, no move to leave. He was aware, suddenly, of the way the one-eyed fabrication droid had stopped and was staring at them like it witnessed vows. You should, he echoed, thumb tracing a circle against her palm that meant nothing in any official language and said too much in every other. It's late. This is a terrible idea. Definitely terrible. A hint of a smile. What time? First bell. he said, before the guild and their cousins wake. I'll be here. She withdrew her hand. But something in the set of her mouth promised continuation. At the threshold she paused, silhouetted by the blue light and a wall of old starship ribs. For the record, she added without looking back, if your legs work, you'll tell me more about your rebellious past. Deal, he said, and watched her glide out into the latticework of the yard. He stood a long time listening to the workshop's electric heartbeat settle. Outside, the yard kids had convinced the droid to give them rides. Its tinny chirp sounded suspiciously like laughter. In the distance, the guild's main office shut down the last row of lights. A drone drifted lazy circles that weren't lazy at all. Taran exhaled. He had built hundreds of things, patched warship guts, bent impossible alloys into obedient shapes. This was different. This was building a bridge to a nervous system, and a person who had learned to exist without trusting stairs. Beyond the container's thin wall, two dockhands argued about ration burners. A kettle hissed. Someone sang off-key. The real court wasn't marble and decrees. It was who got parts and who got care, whose lives were categorized too expensive to restore, and whose weren't. He touched the Erwin processor, cool and waiting, then went to scribble notes that were more like Vow's adaptive layer for Lavari synapse bloom. Latency smoothing bound to breath cadence, redundancy across knee and ankle, fail, safe that soften, falls instead of locks. He wrote until the sun's heat bled off the metal piles and the yard turned night blue. When he finally shut down the hollows, the legs hung in the air like a promise and a dare. Tomorrow, he told them, and to no one in particular added, don't blow up. Somewhere out among the stacks, the guild's drone altered its lazy circle and drifted closer, as if the yard itself had decided to listen. Taran grinned at the ceiling and killed the lights. For once, peace and possibility sat next to each other on the same bench. Morning would come fast. He wanted it to. The desert outside New Alexandria was a graveyard of starships. Under the light of twin moons, the wreckage shimmered like bones, dusted with frost. Each hull, a tombstone from a war no one remembered. Taran crouched behind the twisted remains of a cruiser, his scanner pulsing faint green. The quantum processor he needed, the heart of his project with Naira, was buried somewhere beneath him. Retrieving it meant trespassing on a restricted military salvage zone, dodging drones armed with plasma rifles, and praying that his borrowed clearance codes fooled the system long enough to get out alive. He checked his wrist communicator. Naira's holographic projection flickered to life. Violet hair haloed in static. Tell me you're not actually inside the restricted zone, she said. Her tone, a mix of disbelief and concern. Define inside. Taran replied, shifting a length of twisted bulkhead. Her green eyes narrowed. Taran shivers. If you get yourself incinerated, I will personally reanimate you just to scold you. Relax, he said, flashing his roguish smile. You're talking to a professional. You're talking to a human with a talent for trouble. Exactly, he said, crouching as a patrol drone passed overhead. But trouble's how innovation happens. The drone's light beam swept past his position, then moved on. Taran exhaled slowly and continued forward, ducking through the gash in the warship's hull. Inside, the air was heavy with ionized metal and dust. His scanner pulsed faster, leading him deeper. Found it? He murmured, brushing debris from a scorched console. The quantum processor gleamed like a jewel trapped in carbon. Beautiful little outlaw. Aren't you? Naira's voice came softly through the communicator. You sound like you're flirting with a machine. Only when the machine can change lives, he said, carefully detaching the processor. A faint hum told him the drone patrol was back. "Got to go," he whispered. "Terran, see you soon," he said, cutting the channel as the searchlight flared white. He dove behind a fallen girder, the beam grazing his shoulder. Alarms began to shriek through the wreck field. He sprinted for the outer ridge. Lungsburning. Processor tucked under his jacket. A plasma bolt hissed past him. Molten air, kissing the side of his neck. He vaulted over a fuselage panel, skidded down a slope of metallic sand, and slammed into the open desert. His boots churned up dust as he ran toward the city lights in the distance. When the alarms finally faded behind him, he laughed breathless, half crazed with adrenaline. He was alive, and he had the processor. An hour later, Naira opened her door before he could knock. Her quarters glowed with soft lavender light that matched her skin's shimmer. She wore something simple, a dark tunic that left her shoulders bare. Practical, yet disarmingly elegant. "You're late," she said, eyes flicking to the dust, streaking his jacket. "Had to take the scenic route," he replied, holding up the processor. "Mission accomplished." She stared at it, awe and relief warring in her expression. "You really did it." "I told you," he said softly. "I never break a promise." Her hoverchair drifted closer until they were inches apart. "You could have died. Would have been a waste of perfectly good charm." She sighed, but her lips twitched despite herself. "You're impossible." He shrugged. "You like that about me." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them thrummed. The same subtle frequency that had sparked in the workshop. "Show me," she said finally. He followed her inside. The room was small, but alive shelves filled with books and fragments of alien art. A projection of the Lavari homeworld looping on the wall. Music whispering low like a heartbeat. He placed the processor on her workbench. "Once we integrate this into the neural core, it should adjust to your signal patterns automatically." She studied him. "You sound so certain." "I am. Because I've got the best test pilot in the system." Naira's smile was brief but genuine. "Then, let's make history." They worked for hours. Terran guided the calibration, while Naira linked her neural ports to the prosthetic harness. The hum of the processor grew steady, synchronizing with her pulse. "It's responding," she whispered, fingers tightening on the armrests of her chair. "Keep your breathing even," he instructed. "Let the interface learn your rhythm." Her breath hitched as the first signal fired through her nerves, a spark of contact. Raw and electric. "I can feel them," she gasped. "The legs, they're there." Tehran's chest tightened. "Try to move your right foot." She concentrated, and the mechanical limb flexed smoothly, the chrome surface catching the light. Tears welled in her eyes. "It feels real." "It is," he said quietly. "Every signal, every impulse, it's all you." She looked up at him. Laughter and disbelief tangled in her voice. "Terran, I'm standing." He was already there, steadying her by the waist as she rose. Trembling, for the first time in 11 years, Naira Lavari stood on her own. "How does it feel?" he asked, his voice rough. "Like coming home." The words struck him harder than any plasma bolt could. They stood together in the workshop's pale light, surrounded by the hum of living machinery. The city beyond was silent, the moons pouring silver through the windows. Naira swayed, unused to the new balance. And Terran caught her instinctively. Their faces were inches apart. Her violet hair brushed his cheek. He could feel her heartbeat through the light armor she wore. "You're shaking," he said softly. "So are you?" He laughed under his breath. Occupational hazard. She smiled, then leaned in. The kiss was tentative, uncertain, but it carried 11 years of silence and a lifetime of waiting. When they finally broke apart, Naira's eyes glowed faintly with the same blue as the processor. "You've changed everything." "Maybe just one thing," he said, "but one's enough." Later, after she'd rested, Terran sat alone at the workbench, tools scattered like stars around him. He should have been elated. He was, but beneath the victory hummed something else, a realization that the project wasn't just about restoring mobility. It was about connection, about rewriting the rules that separated human from alien, possible from impossible. He looked toward the sleeping figure in the next room, her silhouette serene, her new legs folded with inhuman grace. Out in the salvage yard, the night wind carried the faint sound of laughter, the yard kids again, daring the old fabrication droid to race them. The world kept turning, unaware that two outcasts in a converted cargo container had just built the first bridge between species. And somewhere deep inside him, a thought bloomed. If she can stand again, what else can we make stand? The question felt like destiny's whisper. And Terran, reckless as ever, was ready to answer it. 3 weeks later, the workshop had changed. The blue glow of its hollow displays was softer now, mingled with the warm golden light Naira preferred. Music played, sometimes low. Orchestral pieces from Lavari culture that reminded her of waves on bioluminescent shores. Between calibration sessions, she hummed along. And Terran pretended not to be enchanted. She moved differently now. The legs, sleek chrome and matte black, answered every thought as if they'd always been part of her. Sometimes she forgot they weren't. Other times, she'd pause mid-step, look down, and smile, like someone catching themselves in a pleasant dream. The neural link worked flawlessly. Almost. "Terran," she called one morning, her voice edged with unease. "Something's off." He looked up from the diagnostics table. "Off how?" She hesitated. "I feel strange, like my balance is shifting every hour. And the neural signals, they're stronger, inconsistent." Terran frowned, pulling up her bioscan feed. The readings were unexpected. "Your hormone levels are spiking," he said slowly, "and the interface is amplifying it." "Hormones?" she echoed. "What kind of—" She stopped. Understanding flickered across her face, followed by disbelief. "That's impossible." He met her Chaze, already knowing. "Naira, you're pregnant." Silence filled the workshop thick, humming with too many heartbeats. After a long moment, she sank onto the workbench stool, her metal knees bending perfectly. "Pregnant," she repeated, almost whispering. "That shouldn't even be biologically possible." Terran sat across from her, trying to smile but failing. "Well, I've been called overachieving before." Her laugh came shaky, but real. "You mean to tell me we've just rewritten xenobiology?" "Looks that way," he said softly. "Congratulations, engineer." Her hands trembled as she touched her abdomen. "Still flat. A child. Ours. Hybrid," he murmured. "Human and Lavari. That's going to make a few medical journals explode." She looked up sharply. "You're not scared?" He shrugged, terrified, but mostly amazed. For the first time in years, she let herself cry. Not because of pain or loss, but because life, in all its impossible defiance, had found her again. The pregnancy changed everything. By the end of the second month, The adaptive processor had started compensating for Naira's new physiology, balancing her shifting center of gravity, smoothing the neural flux caused by her body's biochemical storms. But the strain was visible. The legs needed constant recalibration. And Taryn found himself rewriting algorithms in the middle of the night while she slept nearby, hand resting protectively on her stomach. Between work sessions, they'd share quiet moments, eating instant noodles on the floor. Her teasing him about human cuisine. "You people worship carbohydrates the way my species reveres stars." He'd retort that Lavari spice was a biological weapon. Their laughter filled the container like warmth. One evening, after a particularly stubborn calibration, Taryn set his tools down. "We can't keep doing this," he said. "Running illegal salvage. Hiding from the guild. Pretending this is just a project." "You want to stop?" she asked. "I want to build something," he said. "Legitimately. A workshop. A real business. No more midnight scavenging." She tilted her head. "The human outlaw wants to go legal." He smiled. "Outlaws grow up. Sometimes." Her laughter was soft. "Fond. You're serious." "I found a place," he said, sliding a hologram across the table. "Old warehouse on the commercial side of the yard. Big enough for research bays and a public clinic. We'll register under both our names." "You think the guild will allow it?" He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "They'll have to. We'll make tech. They can't ignore prosthetics. The Galactic Health Authority could never mass produce. Accessible. Affordable. For everyone." Naira looked at the hollow of the warehouse, a forgotten ruin of steel and dust, and saw it transform in her mind. She saw light. Hope. A future. "You want to build a home?" she said. "I want to build ours." Taran replied. Construction began quietly. They used scrap from derelict cruisers, repurposed drone arms for precision welding, and coded every system from scratch. The neighbors thought they were mad, two people building a clinic for miracles. But soon the rumor spread through the yard, the Lavari who walks, and the human who made it possible. Workers came to ask for help, broken prosthetics, outdated implants, nerve damage from radiation burns. Naira took every case. Taryn worked until his hands blistered. One evening, as they collapsed side by side among half-finished machinery, she murmured, "You realize the court will notice us soon." He stared at the ceiling. "Let them. The Ministry of Genetic Affairs doesn't like anomalies, especially hybrids." He turned to her, eyes steady. "Then we'll give them a reason to rethink their laws." Her fingers brushed his. "Always the rebel." "Always," he said. By the 5th month, the clinic was complete. A glowing sign hung above the doors, the House of Reclamation, a place where what was broken became whole. Inside, rows of prosthetic limbs gleamed like art pieces. Each was a story miners. Veterans. Engineers. People who'd been forgotten. And now, thanks to Naira and Taran, they walked again. Their child, their impossible child, had already changed the world. That night, Naira stood on the balcony, one hand resting on the gentle curve of her belly. The city stretched out below like circuitry lit by stars. Taran joined her, draping his jacket around her shoulders. "You're cold," he said. "I'm fine," she murmured. "Just thinking about how we got here. From a junkyard to this." She smiled faintly. "And how nothing about us should have worked, and yet it does." He brushed a strand of violet hair from her face. "We make the impossible possible. That's kind of our thing." Her laughter was quiet, full of love. "Then promise me one more impossible thing." Terran. Anything. Promise. We'll protect this. Our child. Our work. From everyone who'd try to claim it. He didn't hesitate. I swear it. Above them, the twin moons rose, one gold, one silver. Their light caught in her eyes, in the metallic sheen of her legs, in the quiet defiance of two souls who refused to stay within the lines the galaxy had drawn for them. Tomorrow, Naira thought, the world will know what we've built. And when the world came knocking, they would be ready. The House of Reclamation opened under a pale dawn. The twin suns were still low, painting New Alexandria in bands of bronze and violet. Workers lined the railways leading to the new clinic, whispering to one another, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. Naira and Tehran stood before the entrance, side by side, watching the automated shutters retract. Light spilled across the floor clean, bright, hopeful. The hollow sign above the door flickered to life: Reclamation, Adaptive Prosthetics, and Neural Integration Lab. You realize, Naira said, voice low but warm. We've just gone from illegal salvagers to licensed innovators overnight. Taran grinned. We're trendsetters, outlaws in paperwork. She elbowed him gently. Don't ruin this with swagger. Can't help it. Swagger's half my charm. The laughter that followed echoed through the new hallways, a sound of victory wrapped in disbelief. Inside, the lab gleamed with impossible technology, quantum processors suspended in containment gel, hollow screens mapping neural pathways in shimmering color, a research wing with diagnostic pods that hummed softly like sleeping stars. At the center stood a singular creation, Tehran's masterpiece, the birthing chair. It was sleek and elegant, its form curving like folded wings, laced with adaptive cables and a neural lattice that pulsed in time with Naira's heartbeat. Designed to support both Lavari and human biology, it would allow her full mobility during labor, a blend of science, love, and rebellion. You actually built it, she whispered, tracing the alloy with trembling fingers. I had help, he said. You? Mostly. And the baby. She smiled at that, the child already, a silent collaborator in their work. The Lavari healers would call this a sacred device, the fusion of purpose and compassion. Then it's the most sacred thing I've ever built, Taran said. He was about to say more, when the workshop's security alert chimed an incoming shuttle. Expecting anyone, Naira asked, her voice sharpening. Terran checked the feed. Not for another week. Looks like military registration tags. The humor vanished from her face. So soon. The visitors arrived precisely 10 minutes later, 3 officers in slate-gray uniforms. Bearing the insignia of the Galactic Medical Division, they carried the kind of calm authority that came from knowing they could seize whatever they wanted. The lead officer, a tall man with silvered temples and a tone polished by years of diplomacy, extended a hand. Colonel Brighton. Miss Lavari. Mr. Shivers. My compliments on your achievement. Truly remarkable. Terran didn't take the hand. You came early. The ministry was eager. Brighton said smoothly. A successful Lavari human neural sync was unprecedented enough. A viable hybrid pregnancy. That's a paradigm shift. We'd like to discuss. Oversight. Naira's voice was cool steel. Oversight. Or ownership. Brighton smiled faintly. Semantics. Terran stepped closer. Eyes hard. You're not taking our research. Mr. Shivers. You misunderstand. We're offering resources, funding, protection, medical facilities, far superior to this. He gestured around the lab. Garage. Garage Naira's tone could have frozen plasma. This garage changed galactic medicine. Brighton inclined his head slightly, unfazed. Exactly why the division must ensure its stability. Do you realize what you've created here? The potential military applications alone. There it is. Terran muttered. Always about weapons. Progress requires investment. Brighton said, and control. Naira moved to stand beside Terran, their shoulders touching. Our child isn't an experiment. And our technology isn't for sale. The colonel studied her for a long moment. You'll want to reconsider. Once your child is born, there will be attention. Not all of it friendly. We can protect you. We'll handle that. Daran said. Brighton's smile faded. Protection costs, resources. When others come, and they will, they won't knock first. We're done talking, Naira said firmly, for a heartbeat. The room went still. Then Brighton nodded once. Cold professionalism, returning to his expression. Very well. But understand, your invention changes the balance of power. Someone will claim it. One way or another. I'd prefer it be us. He turned sharply, signaling his men. The sound of their boots faded down the hall, leaving silence behind. When the door sealed, Terran let out a slow breath. So much for keeping a low profile. Naira pressed a hand against her temple. They're right about one thing. This changes everything. Then we make sure it changes it for the right reasons, he said. She looked at him, eyes soft but resolute. Then we need protection. Real protection. He grinned faintly. Already ahead of you. By nightfall, the House of Reclamation had transformed again. Security drones patrolled the perimeter on silent repulsors. Quantum shields shimmered faintly over the windows. Their harmonic patterns tuned to Naira's neural signature. Terran had been a scavenger. A rogue, but tonight he looked like a tactician. If anyone tries to breach the perimeter, he explained, fingers flying over his console, the field will invert, locking them in stasis. Non-lethal. Mostly. Naira raised an eyebrow. Mostly. Depends on how stupid they are. She smiled. Even as she placed a hand on her belly, you sound like a soldier. Never liked uniforms, he said, glancing up. But I'll fight for you. For both of you. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his. I know. Days turned into weeks. Patients filled their clinic miners with shattered exosuits. Couriers missing limbs from warp accidents. Veterans whose prosthetics had failed them. Each walked out renewed, bearing the mark of the house's craftsmanship. Naira moved among them with grace, her legs flowing as naturally as flesh. The child within her grew stronger, her green skin shimmered brighter. The quantum processor adapted daily, recalibrating her balance. At night, she and Terran would lie awake, planning, schematics, new algorithms, contingency networks. Sometimes they simply watched the stars and spoke of futures of raising their child, of teaching it to build bridges instead of walls. And though the galaxy outside stirred with curiosity, envy, and threat, within their walls there was peace, a fragile, defiant peace, built on love and solder. One evening, the warning lights on the diagnostic board flared crimson. What's wrong? Naira asked, stepping toward the screen. The interface spike. Taran said, your neural field's syncing with something else, something new. They stared at the readings, a second resonance pattern. Small, but distinct, emanating from her abdomen. It's him, she whispered. Our child. The baby's neural signature is merging with yours. Taryn said in awe. He's learning before he's even born. Adapting, she murmured. Like the processor. He grinned. Like his parents. She took his hand, guiding it to her stomach. A pulse, a tiny electric vibration met his touch. Our child, she said softly, is already rewriting the rules. He met her Chaze. Then let's make sure the galaxy knows what rule breakers can build. Outside, the night shimmered with shield light, and the House of Reclamation stood firm, a sanctuary forged from defiance, love, and the quiet hum of a world that had just begun to change. The birthing suite glowed like a nebula. Soft, violet light washed over steel and glass, and the air thrummed with the pulse of machines, synchronized to a heartbeat both human and Lavari. Every sensor, every neural filament had been tuned for this single moment, the culmination of their rebellion, their love, and the science that had made the impossible breathe. Taryn moved like a conductor in an orchestra of miracles. Hollow panels floated around him, displaying streams of data neural harmonics, oxygen levels, quantum flux. At the center sat Naira, upright in the birthing chair they had built together, her metallic legs rooted to the floor and humming with contained energy. The field's stable, he said, voice low but sure. Quantum links holding. He's helping you. Naira's breath came slow and steady, despite the contraction rippling through her. Of course he is, she murmured. He's your son. Half yours. Taryn corrected, smiling, despite the tension coiled in his chest. That's where he gets the brains. She reached for his hand. Her grip was firm, electric, and your recklessness. The neural lights around her flared brighter. The baby's bioelectric signature resonated perfectly with her processor, weaving into the same algorithm that powered her legs. Every pulse of pain translated into light, every push of will echoed through the room as music. Anur sabot kirpad. Cervical dilation. Optimal. Hybrid neural sync stable. Daran exhaled. You hear that? Our kid's already breaking diagnostic protocols. Remind me to tell him to keep it up. Naira said through a smile that trembled. He brushed sweat-damp hair from her forehead. You're almost there. You're doing perfect. Another contraction hit. Stronger this time. She gasped, biting down a cry, but the quantum field shimmered, absorbing the strain, converting it into a harmonic hum that filled the chamber. Then, suddenly, everything stilled. A soft light spilled from the quantum lattice, and a new sound rose, the first cry of a child. Taryn froze. The world went silent around him. Naira laughed a wet, breathless sound of disbelief. He's here, she whispered. Taryn's hands shook as he reached out. The baby, small, luminous, had skin tinted faint green, the faintest lavender veins pulsing beneath the surface. His eyes opened, revealing irises that shimmered like miniature galaxies. Nixon, Naira said, voice trembling. It means bridge between stars. Taryn looked at her, then at their son, and felt something inside him rearrange into permanence. Perfect, he said hoarsely. Hours later. The lab was quiet. Naira stood, walked, cradling Nixon against her chest. The robotic legs moved with uncanny grace, adapting automatically to the subtle shifts of her weight. As she rocked him, Taryn finished securing the final data logs. The processor's rewriting itself again, he said, glancing at the monitor. It's integrating him into the base code. The system's learning from your shared biofield. Naira smiled, still staring at their son. He's part of it. Of both of us. He was always part of the circuit. He moved to stand behind her. wrapping his arms around them both. He's the living proof that connection is the real technology. She laughed softly. And stubbornness. In the weeks that followed, their inventions spread across the stars. News of the hybrid birth and adaptive prosthetic revolution reached every sector. People who had been told no, their whole lives walked again, danced again, lived again. And as the miracles multiplied, so did the attention. The military division sent emissaries with sealed offers. Corporate medtechs proposed staggering sums for licensing rights. The Galactic Council tried to classify their technology as strategic property. They refused them all. One evening, an envoy from the Council's court appeared via HoloLink, a woman in ceremonial robes, her voice silken but cold. "You've changed the structure of society itself," she said. "You stand at the threshold of a new biological era. We would offer you patronage under the House of Ministers' resources. Legitimacy. Protection." Naira stood tall beside Terran, Nixon in her arms. "We already have legitimacy," she said. "The lives we've restored are proof enough. And as for protection," Terran added, his tone iron, "we built our own." The envoy inclined her head, a smile ghosting her lips. Defiance. Even now, the galaxy does love its rebels. The holo blinked out. For a long time, neither spoke. The hum of the lab systems filled the silence. Then Naira chuckled. "She called us rebels. I suppose that makes this our court." Terran turned to her, eyes warm. "A court of healers and misfits. I can live with that." Months passed. The House of Reclamation expanded into a network satellite clinics across frontier worlds, all bearing their symbol, two interlocked rings of light. The mark of connection. Veterans. Miners. Children. They all came. In the evenings, Naira would walk the hallways, greeting patients, her legs whispering across the polished floors. The children would follow her, fascinated by the gentle hum that came with every step. Terran would trail behind, pretending not to smile as Nixon, now babbling, reached for every shiny tool he saw. They had become a found family, a collective of engineers, healers, refugees, and dreamers bound by a shared belief that broken things were just waiting for someone stubborn enough to fix them. One night, under the twin sun's descending glow, Terran stood by the window, watching the salvage yard far below, the same junkyard where everything had begun, where a reckless human had met a woman who refused to give up. He felt a hand slip into his. Naira leaned her head on his shoulder, Nixon asleep against her chest. "You ever think," she murmured, "about what would have happened if we hadn't met that night?" He smiled, eyes soft with memory. "Then the universe would have stayed a little dimmer." She laughed quietly. "Smooth. Honest," he said. "Look at what we built. You walked again. We made a family. We gave the galaxy a second chance." Outside, a fleet of medical shuttles took off from their landing platforms, carrying prosthetics and processors to distant colonies. Each ship bore their crest. Naira's gaze followed them. "Do you think the world will ever stop trying to own what it doesn't understand?" Terran kissed her temple. "No. But as long as there are people like us, it won't win." He looked down at Nixon, tiny fingers curled around his thumb, skin glowing faintly in the twilight. "That," he said softly, "is the future we're fighting for." Naira smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. A bridge between stars. They stood there together, the outlaw, the engineer, and the child born of two worlds bathed in the light of the twin suns that had witnessed their beginning. And as the wind whispered through the steel bones of the old salvage yard below, The hum of the quantum processor merged with the heartbeat of a family who had proved, once and for all, that love is the most powerful technology in the universe.